I managed to get another few major items done in my Dungeons of Daggorath port last weekend. I actually did not have a chance to make a video last weekend, so I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Let me just dive in and kind of demonstrate the functionality. So we still have the intro, and then it goes to the demo. I don't have the player doing anything in the demo yet, but the creatures now move and make noise and attack and pick up items. And I have the map done, so we could see here's where our player is, here's the creatures running around making noise. Alright, let's get into a game that I can actually control and stuff before our player just gets beat up for no reason. So it's a lot more like a real game at this point. You can actually run around and do things. Now normally you would only get to a map if you have a scroll, but obviously you don't have one on the first level. So for testing purposes, I just put a little button in here. One problem is the button gets highlighted. He hit me. I don't have dying or fainting yet, so I don't really need to worry, but I try not to get hit anyway. Now, this isn't the keyboard that I normally use. My keyboard's mechanical and it's very loud. Way too loud to record with, so I'm not as good with this one. And let's go ahead and let the snake pick up the torch so we can see that at work. There we go. And you can see he hit me. You can also watch them pick it up. They are all over. So the movement code was actually pretty strange the way that it worked in the original, and it took me a lot of last weekend to get that all straight. Essentially the creatures have a 75% chance of deciding to go straight, and then a 25% chance of turning, 12.5% for each direction. Looks a little weird. Huh, I think part of the map was still there. So let me just show you actually some of how I did the map, which I thought was pretty interesting. So we have the screen, and then I have the maze screen. Yeah, let me turn this off. Okay, so this is the maze screen, and that is drawn using large pixels. It's essentially 32 by 32, and I have it, the original had the 8 pixels by 6 pixels in order to fit the size screen. I think it's 256 by 192 or something like that. So in order to draw the maze, he actually does 8 by 6 grids. What I did instead, to make it a lot easier, is I just have 32 by 32 because that's the size of the entire maze, and then I just scale it so that it's the same amount of the same dimensions. The creatures are actually I had these before. I showed it in the last video. The creatures are underneath each maze. What I did was I just put a sprite renderer on each, and they have a map icon that I just kind of drew. And it's the same thing for the player. The player has a player icon. So I just drew these out, and I have them be at the same dimension, the 8x6, and off-centered them and did whatever I needed to do to make it look like the original map. Same thing for any items that are left on the ground. They have, it's just like a little line essentially. So that's how I did that, and all the vertical features as well. So in order to make this happen, I had to physically move the items. So we have on all of them a map position, which is 0, 0 starting here in the corner and then goes to 31, 31 down in this corner. And that's not the way that it would line up though in Unity. 0, 0 is in the middle, and I could have done some funky stuff to kind of make it so it would be the same, but instead I just use a little simple math, multiply by 8 and subtract by 16 or something along those lines for the x, and just multiply for by 6 for the y. Something along those lines, I don't remember. I think maybe it was multiplied by -8, something along those lines. And then that just makes it so that it'll appear in the correct place. So if we look at like a creature like this blob, where is he? Okay, here he is down here. So I already had the creatures created, and each creature has its own script. It has its sound. It has any items as a child item, and if it dies, then it just drops them on the ground, and then it becomes a child of the maze level that it's on. So it worked out pretty well, and it's the same thing for the player. The player has an icon, and I just physically move them. So whenever a creature or the player moves on the map, I just do some very basic math in order to change the transform position so that it'll look correct on the map. So it was a neat little trick, and that worked out well. So let's see, what else can they do? They can move, they can attack, they can pick up items. I showed the maze. Let's see, I guess if I did have a scroll, then I could actually just use the scroll. I suppose I can give myself a scroll just to show that, but it's the same thing as hitting the toggle button. I guess also on the code side, something I did was I took a little bit of time. I had all my comments were in a different format. I normally, before I started working in Unity a lot, I was doing a lot of Objective-C, doing iOS apps, and I had formatted the comments differently, but it didn't like it in Visual Studio. It didn't like give me the description correctly like it is here on the pop-up. So I found out that you have to do this kind of format here with the 3 slashes. So I went through all my scripts, which took a while, and fixed them all. So now that all works correctly, but it took a lot of time. So that's part of the reason why I didn't really have time last weekend to create a video. I will probably do some more work on the game tomorrow. I still have on my list a few things. The demo, the demo does appear and the creatures run around and everything's in the correct place, but I don't have the player do what he normally does. There's like a list of commands that he goes through. So that's one thing I have to do. I still have to do saving and loading the game. I still have to do fainting and dying, where the game is not that challenging. Let's see. And really just a few, those are the major things. There's just a few little details like winning the game if you kill the wizard, and a few things like that. I do have the animation for that ready, but I don't actually check for the conditions. So there's a few things I still have to do, but it's pretty far along, and hopefully in another couple of weekends, another few weeks or so, I'll basically be done. I also need to kind of create some kind of menu system. Right now it looks for, if you hit escape, it knows, but it doesn't actually do anything. I want to pause the game and have a nice menu come up, so you'll have some options that you can check off. I'd also like to do the artifacts. In the original game, it wasn't monochrome like this on a regular CRT TV was there were different colors, like I think blue for vertical and things like that. I have some ideas on how to imitate that a little bit, and if I can come up with something, then I'll make that an option as well in the menu that comes up, as well as things like the shield fix, because the original game had the leather shield and the bronze shield had the physical and magical protection transposed. So I have items that fix that, but I don't actually have a way of telling you to use them yet. So a few things like that. Random mazes, I think, would be another one. I created that functionality in the C++ version, a port of the game done in SDL. That was, I think, in 2006. I contributed a few things like that. So there's a few options that I want to include in this version as well before I don't know, I release it. I don't know exactly how I'm even going to do that, but at any rate, just wanted to create a video showing how far along I am at this point, and I'll probably create another one when I have something else to show.